Statistics South Africa says 84% of children were subjected to corporal punishment by teachers in 2021. This despite the 1997 abolishment of corporal punishment as a form of discipline in South African schools. The report further revealed that 6 in every 10 children in rural areas and 7 in 10 in urban areas were victims of corporal punishment in 2019. We're joined by Molayi, Chief Director responsible for social statistics at Stats SA. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Maybe let's start with how the research was conducted and why.
Okay, good day, Dudu, and good day to the viewers. And thanks for having us. So let me first explain how we put together the report. This is not a survey that we have conducted, but we mine into the data set that we've been collecting over the years. And the reason being is that we wanted to come up with a product that looked at this child statistics theme as a theme. And if you look at the topic that we're covering in the report itself, we're trying to find out whether how South African children are being exposed to maltreatment. And maybe, Dudu, let me just explain that how we conceptualize, the concept of maltreatment. If you look at WHO, how they define it in terms of 4 dimensions. 1, it's about the physical abuse. 2, the sexual abuse, and emotional abuse, and neglect. So specifically for this report, we only look at the 2 dimensions, which is the physical and the verbal abuse.
Got you. When it comes to verbal abuse, what did the children have to tell you? So what are they hearing from their teachers?
Yes. So basically, if you look at the statistics that we've managed to put on the report, over time, if you compare it from 2009 up until 2019, and you look at in terms of any sort of experience of this type of abuse, it actually has dropped from 18% to around 8.2%. And to your point earlier, if you look at the 2021, corporal punishment is actually the most likely type of abuse that children are actually experiencing, followed by physical abuse by teacher, and then verbal abuse by teacher, and then the last 2 is actually experiences of violence that they're receiving from their peers, their learners. So it's either a verbal or even a physical. So we don't, in the report, we are not necessarily having information in terms of the type of verbal abuse, but they are actually experiencing abuse in their spaces at school. And this is the cohort that is between 5 and 17 years. This is actually the school-going children. And if you look at the actual numbers, we were talking about 1 million of these children that are actually experiencing this type of violence.
I think it would be interesting to find out the forms or what the children understand to be this verbal abuse in order to get the relevant intervention. And then you speak of corporal punishment, and then there's violence. Where corporal punishment is concerned, what does that look like? I think when we were growing up, not to glorify it, you would put your hands out, there's a ruler or an eraser from the board, and they would smack you with it on your fingers. But what does it look like today?
Yes, I think it's almost similar to what you just described. So when you look at in terms of awareness, because remember, we also even checked whether people are aware, as in your introduction, that the past 20 years, South Africa has actually abolished this corporal punishment. The awareness is quite high. But then, in terms of experiences, as you mentioned, this actually is the most experienced type of violence at school, sitting around 84%. And then, as I said, it's followed by verbal by teachers. So, if you look at the spread between rural and urban, we found that the corporal punishment is actually skewed towards the rural areas, and your verbal abuse is actually as more prominent in an urban areas. And over time, in the period of 10 years from 2009 to 2019, we have seen that verbal abuse actually have increased. So one can actually attribute also to the rise in technology and also issues around the social media. But then that's what we have seen, and also what we have also noticed in terms of boys and girls, girls are more likely to actually experience also this type of violence, especially the verbal violence.
Yeah, you mentioned in your report that violent disciplinary methods were used more on females than males. How and why?
Yes. So in the report, we don't have actually the reasons of why, but if you look at the trend, we are seeing that actually females or girls in this case, they're actually experiencing this. Whereas boys, they are more likely to experience the physical abuse from their learners. That's one thing that we've picked up. Whereas girls are more likely to get experiencing the verbal, even from both teachers and also learners.
Here's what I found interesting about the report. You mentioned that close to 2 in 5 households with children believe that physical punishment as a form of discipline is necessary if the child is caught drinking alcohol or smoking. Yeah. Similarly, 2 in 5 households with children believe that children must be physically punished for carrying weapons. And so it goes. But then it would appear that we still have some sectors in society that very much believe in disciplining children their own way, if you will?
Yes. So in the report, as you've mentioned, we're actually looking at the perceptions to say, asking household, what would be an acceptable situation where you would have to punish a child. And as you mentioned, the first one, if you look at, let's start with the schools. They said that if a child is found drinking or smoking at the school or carrying a weapon, those are the top 2. And then the third one is about if the learner or a child is fighting with another learner. So, as to your point, I fully agree that there is still some sectors in our society that still believe that you have to punish a child, and these are some of the situation. If you look at it from the household now, meaning at home, and arguing with the parent, that became number 1, around 30%. Actually, it was sitting around 30% that indicated that, telling a lie and fighting with the siblings. So those are the top 3 that household indicated that it's okay to actually punish a child.
You conclude by saying preventing violence against children requires a major shift in what societies regard as acceptable practice. How to standardize acceptable practice? What is acceptable? What's acceptable to you is not acceptable to me, and it's such a touchy topic because it's people's children.
Yes, and I think that's why if you look at let's maybe look at it from the school point of view. That's why you find the Department of Education, they're also coming up with some measures in terms of how they can assist in that space, in terms of coming with other alternative way of dealing with this. And I think in a household space, as you put it, it will definitely goes back to the parents in terms of how they see what is deemed correct in terms of dealing with issues of when they have to put discipline measures in terms of children. So I agree, because this can't be a blunt statement to say this is how it should be done. It should be based on how parents are seeing it is much more deemed to in terms of the circumstances that are in.
Mr. Molayi, sir, thank you very much for your time. Molayi, Chief Director responsible for social statistics at Stats SA.